Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. We are from Group 2. We'll be presenting today on the topic of barrier in modern education system. We will be going to discuss the topic specifically on why modern education system nowadays has some sort of barriers to get access to it. Okay, before we jump to the topic, let us understand on why we need to concern about education. As you can see, this is the picture of Nelson Mandela. He is the former president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He said that education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world. This is very true. You can observe by yourself. For example, how poor family can change their status with gaining proper knowledge, or maybe how a knowledgeable prime minister dictates a country to be a better country, and many others. So the point is, knowledge is very important. This is why the UNESCO highlighted the education aspect in their fourth Sustainable Development Goal. This is the global goal which we try to reach at a certain level that everyone gets their right to get proper education. However, we can say that this goal is not 100% attained yet. We do believe that this modern education system, there is a barrier to get access to it. Or in other words, there is an inequality issue which some people get but the rest don't. So we will try to explain further on why this happened by highlighting three main factors that create such barrier.
The first factor creating barriers in modern education is the limitation of technological facilities in developing countries. A few developing countries are facing a great challenge in chasing the modern education system due to limited technological facilities. This statement is supported by Olivier Chingaya, the ECA Director of African Centre for Statistics, that mentioned the slow ICT development in many African countries are making them to face great challenge in enhancing many essential sectors, including the education sector. This is due to the insufficient of proper access to the internet, information technology, electricity problem, expensive internet plan, and many others. Most governments in developing countries only focus on the development of the urban area due to the concentrated economic activities around, where the income is obtained for the country. Unlike in rural area, most of people carry out the small business and traditional agriculture activities, where such economic activities produce lesser profit for the government, that result in slow development in those areas. To illustrate, this statistic has been revealed by the World Bank Group that show the average population with the internet access in the sub-Sahara African is only 7.1%, which cover 2.4% from the rural areas. This shocking data exposes that people in Africa is still distant from the technologies, which inhibit the goal towards the modern education system. Is there any problem in Malaysia? For your information, Malaysia is also one of the fastest developing countries in the ASEAN region, where almost people here utilize the technological equipment such as the internet and gadgets in their daily life, and also in the essential sectors including the education sector. Yet, it cannot be disputed that some places in Malaysia, especially in the remote areas in Sabah and Sarawak, are facing poor network connection due to lack of transmission cables, especially in the hilly areas, lack of population staying there, and also the frequent cable theft activities reported at rural area. From the statement of Minister Zahidi in 2020, there are less than 20% of places in rural areas of Sabah and Sarawak that have no connection to the internet that are considered as red zones. This fact illustrates that Malaysia still needs to improve the technological facilities, especially in the remote areas, for the better access. The news about the students climbing up the tree, studying outside the home, and having online classes in the car only for the connection to is no longer a joke among the Malaysians because it has already happened. For instance, Viviana, an 18-year-old student from Sabah, was reported climbing up a tree for the internet access to sit for her online exam. This news illustrates that Malaysia is also facing the problem regarding the internet connection, especially in the rural areas that are difficult for the students to study and having online classes. Next, the second main point is the internal problem faced by the government, which are the poverty and unreliable power source. Majority of the people living in the rural areas are living in the poverty, where they cannot rely on the government's help to escape from it. For example, more than 70% of the world's poorest people that comprise of 422 million people in Africa live under the poverty line, which only makes not more than $1.9 a day. The poverty that encircles the African community has impeded them from getting proper and modern education like in other countries. Having a smartphone or computer are considered as luxurious that they even cannot buy a second-hand computer or smartphone for domestic use. Furthermore, uh, there are only 43% of Africans have genuine electricity supply from the government, which complicate the use of technological hardware in those areas due to the frequent sudden blackout, like what happened in South Africa. From this, it can be confirmed that the limitation of technology in developing countries has created a huge barrier for the modern education system.
Now I would like to proceed to the second factors creating barrier in modern education, which is teacher shortage crisis. As targeted by UNESCO, by 2030, the number of teachers needed to support world education by the year is around 163 million teachers. However, currently the number of teachers worldwide is around 92 millions, according to UNESCO Institute for Statistics (UIS). Thus, it is evident that the world are suffering shortage of teachers. There are two reasons of the teacher shortage crisis. The first reason is the increase in the number of schools. The number of schools related to the number of students, where if the number of students increase, more schools need to be built. But schools cannot operate without teachers, so the new schools will make demands on new teachers. Does this make the demand on teachers increase? For this situation, the best example is Afghanistan, where the teacher-student ratio for primary level is around 49, which is quite high according to the world's standard. Next, the decrease in the number of youths pursuing teacher as a career, also the cause of the crisis. Youths today prefer to see high-income occupations such as doctor, lawyer, engineer, and many more. Plus, some parents also prefer high-income jobs and even they force their children to change their career path even though their children have already decided on to be a teacher. In Malaysia, youths also does not want to in Malaysia, youths also does not want to work far away from their hometown or outside their birth state. They think that the government will send new teachers to rural places such as Sarawak and Sabah, where it is really far for people from the west of Malaysia. Thus, this perception makes they less interest to be a teacher. In this COVID-19 pandemic, the decrease of youths pursuing teaching can be seen clearly. According to the recent survey, the number of undergraduates enrollments for teaching courses decreased during 2021. This is happened maybe because of the youth thought on the risk as a teacher. In the current pandemic situation, this sudden drop in the number of new graduates make the crisis much worse.
Okay, I'll be continuing the discussion. Okay, the third factor that obstructs students from getting education is the level of income to pay for the high cost of study. Okay, let me clarify this statement. What I mean by cost of study is actually include the tuition fee, the accommodation, and also the indirect costs associated with the education. Okay, so what I want to say here is some parents do not have sufficient funds to finance the cost of study of their children, which keep increasing over the years. Then what happened? These students had to end their journey in pursuing education. So because of this, it creates such barrier for the poor. Okay, regarding the tuition fees, It is believed that tuition fees grows faster relative to the level of family income. It means family income is also increasing, but it is not even close with the increase in the tuition fees. So what happened? Poor cannot keep paying the tuition fee, causes inequality issue which the poor don't get education, but the rich do. The next point is inflation reduces the purchasing power. Okay, let me clarify what is the meaning of inflation. In a very simple words, inflation means reduction in the value of money. Okay, for example, 1 ringgit today is not the same with 1 ringgit 10 years ago. Before this, you can buy nasi lemak with 1 ringgit. By nowadays, cannot. So simply means our purchasing power become lesser. So what is the connection to our above statement? Increasing in inflation causes family income to be less value, and less value plus less amount of income makes this problem even worse because they cannot keep with this tuition fee anymore, plus the cost of living that also keep increasing over the years. We do believe that increase in tuition fee is mainly caused by the improvement in the quality itself, like better facility, better syllabus, and more qualified lecturers, etc. It's okay for that, but family income has to keep with the same pace with the tuition fee. Okay, this is a simple graph. This graph shows a proportion of cost of tuition with the total income. I want to highlight in the graph here, this line, the red line. In 2012, it can be said that for some families, the total price of college itself encompasses of 84% of their total income, which is very worrying. Okay, next, why cost of study increases, it is because of the indirect costs associated. When I mention about the indirect costs, it encompasses of mobile data or study equipments like laptop or smartphone. These things are very crucial for students because it can support them for the learning. Unfortunately, because of some tight budget from some students, they have no access towards such resources causes the rich has a better tendency to get better performance in study as compared to the poor, as these resources is very helpful in helping them in the study process. Not only that, some students from poor family have to stop studying because of these indirect costs, because the parent cannot sustain in paying all these costs.
For the Islamic perspective, Prophet Muhammad SAW has mentioned an authentic hadith from the Sunan Ibn Majah, hadith number 24. Talabul ilmi faridatun ala kulli Muslim. That means seeking knowledge is an obligation upon every Muslim. Seeking knowledge in Islam is compulsory for everyone because only knowledge can bring us from the ignorance to the light. We can rewind back to the Islamic history from the prophetic until the caliphate period, where the Islamic civilization is at the peak. A thousand of Islamic scholars has become the pioneer in various discipline knowledge, not only from the religious knowledge but also the modern knowledge. For example, Ibn Sina has introduced the basic concept of the living things in biological, and Al-Khwarizmi has introduced the algebraic method in mathematics that nowadays is widely used in the advanced mathematics. From this, we can conclude that knowledge is the most ample mean to bring up the civilization, and more importantly, from the knowledge, we can realize that only Allah is the all-knowing, so that we can bring us more closer to Him.
Now we have come to the conclusion. Along the presentation, we have learned that the limitation of technologies, facilities in the developing countries, teacher shortage crisis, and level of income to accommodate high-cost study are the three factors that creating barriers in modern education. Therefore, we would like to suggest three ways to solve the issues. First, modern country need to have or lend expertise to the developed country. Second, increase the teacher salaries. This way, we can attract more youths to pursue teaching. Lastly is economic expansion policy to boost the economy to give more subsidy. That is all recommendation we suggest. With the end of the conclusion, it is also the end of our presentation. Hopefully, you got some knowledge from our presentation. Thank you for your attention. Assalamualaikum.